everyone, it's Stephanie, and I wanted to do the mid-year bookish freakout tag. And I love doing this tag every year because it's a chance to talk about books that you really love, but that might not quite make your mid-year top 10 or anything like that. It's a lot of fun. I love watching these videos. I love the questions. So anyway, let's just get to it. What is the best book you have read in 2019? And for me, without a doubt, that goes to The Martian Chronicles by Bradbury. This is exactly what I was looking for at the right time. It's just this gorgeous prose with this thought-provoking science fiction element where in the future humans have colonized Mars, and we are on Mars in different times within this process. We are there, before the humans get there, and we see the Martians and how they live, and we see right when the humans get there how things go down, and what humans do when they get there and try to just bring everything back from Earth onto Mars. And I just absolutely loved this. And this is a mosaic novel, so these are different short stories, and we are checking in, like I said, at different times throughout the history of Earth colonizing Mars, which is something I am always a sucker for. Like, if you tell me a novel is written in short story format, I am already there. So I am so glad I picked this up, and I think we're going to talk about this one later, actually. Best sequel you've read in 2019. It's funny because in past years I always said, I don't read sequels. This year I had like 4 things that could fit in this answer. I'm torn between 2, so I'm going to go with one that I'm not going to talk about later. And so that goes to In an Absent Dream by Seanan McGuire. This is the 4th book in the Wayward Children series. We follow one of the characters from the first book, but we get her prequel story. So the way that these books are set up is the first book, Every Heart a Doorway, is about a boarding school where children who have found doorways to other worlds, I'm going to say like Alice in Wonderland. Like, what happens to Alice when she comes back from Wonderland? How does she function in the real world? And so basically the answer to that is this school is a place for children who have experienced that and are transitioning back into living in the real world, or need some place to be while they wait for their door to open up to them again. And so in the even numbered books, so in the 2nd and this 4th one, we follow characters from it and their prequel, and we see them find their doorway and what happens to them in their world, because when we meet them, they are already back. So it's very interesting. I feel like these are my favorite when we follow the characters and get their prequel stories. So like in the book, they explain that like some worlds are logic and some worlds are like nonsense, illogical. I forget the word that they use. But this book follows a character named Lundy, and she is very quiet, very bookish, and the world she goes into is a goblin market world where everything is very logical. There's a certain way things are done, there are exchanges, and we just follow her life there and learning the way that this world works. And I thought that was very fascinating. I really liked it. Seanan McGuire has a way of really tying up these novellas at the end with an emotional punch, and she definitely did that with this one. I think so far this is my favorite of the series. Number 3, new release that you haven't read yet but you want to. A lot. I think especially since I've been doing the Books in the Freezer podcast, I have to be on top of what new releases are coming out within the genre. So that list is always a mile long. So new releases that have already come out. I really want to read A Hawk in the Woods, which was released by Word Horde. I really want to read The Worst Is Yet to Come by S.B. Miskowski. I really want to read The Resurrectionist by Michael Patrick Hicks. Just a lot of these that just get on the list, and the list keeps getting longer and longer and longer. So many. New release that hasn't come out yet, but you are looking forward to. On the day that I'm filming is its release date, but Growing Things and Other Stories by Paul Tremblay, I pre-ordered a copy, so it should be getting here, fingers crossed, today. But this is a short story collection, and we do, I interviewed him on the podcast while he was working on this book, and he said that we do get characters from his novels making an appearance in this book, which is very exciting. A nonfiction book that I am really looking forward to from Quirk is Monster She Wrote, which is about female horror writers in the history of like Mary Shelley and all kinds of people. I'm really looking forward to that. Another Quirk book that I'm really looking forward to is the Remaking, which is kind of like The Ring, but it's about this horror story that gets more power every time it's retold, and I think it's about a Hollywood remake or like reboot of this story. So I'm really looking forward to that. I just love that kind of commentary. Biggest disappointment for me, I've mentioned it a few times in other videos, but would have to be the Blackstone Chronicles by John Saul. This was written in a serialized format, so like certain stories were released. So this is a collection of all of those stories, but this is about a town that has like an asylum on the hill called like Blackstone Asylum, and everyone in the town played some kind of part in the atrocities that went on in the asylum. And so there's some masked figure that is sending people gifts. Those gifts, when people open them, drive them to do crazy things. In theory, it sounds really good. It did not work for me. I did not care for the writing. The characters were two-dimensional and over the top. The dialogue was horrible. The way women talked about was horrible. Everything was very soap opera-esque. I thought it was very cheesy. At the end of every section, you would see like some figure all in black, like, you know, doing a Pink Panther walk to the next house and dropping off a gift, and it was supposed to be like, oh, what's gonna happen next? And it did not play off that way. It just seemed so cheesy. I rolled my eyes through half of it. But the prose was so digestible that I finished it in 2 days, and it was like a 600-page book. So I guess it had that going for it. Yeah, I mentioned I own like other John Saul books that I think I'm going to get rid of because I was very disappointed in that. So yeah, probably that one. Biggest surprise. I have two. I'll say the first one was Gerald's Game by Stephen King. And I say biggest surprise because if you watch my other videos, I'm kind of like, Stephen King is fine, but I don't think he's for me. I really haven't been blown away by a ton of stuff he's written. I really liked it, and I read The Shining a long time ago and liked it. But other than that, I haven't really been blown away by anything else. And I read Gerald's Game as part of a readathon. It just fit one of the prompts, which is the good thing about readathons. It gets you to read things you wouldn't normally read. And I was really into it. He has a female protagonist, and my complaint about Stephen King is that I don't love the way he writes women a lot of the time, and a lot of his books have that mid-century 1950s mindset. But this was very different. I thought he did a great job with Jessie Burlingame, the protagonist of this, and really being in her head, and this was definitely a feminist novel. I loved it. It's not for everyone. I mean, it's essentially a one-character novel where she is tied to a bed and has to, one, find a way to get out of her predicament, but two, she is forced to confront trauma from her past. And I am all about that. Like, give me all the character studies where they have to like come head to head with some kind of issue. So absolutely loved it. It was also gruesome in just the right ways as well as introspective, and I very much enjoyed it. Like, this is on my top of Stephen King books at the moment for sure. And then my other surprise is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White. This is a young adult novel that came out last year. I read it because it was nominated for a Bram Stoker Award, and it ended up winning that Bram Stoker Award for young adult novel. And this is a retelling of the story of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but from the point of view of Victor's fiance, Elizabeth Frankenstein. In the novel, she doesn't quite get fridged because it happens at the end of the story, but essentially that's what happens to her. She just serves to teach the main character a lesson. And so Kiersten White took this story and did it from Elizabeth's point of view, you know, set it in that time, but gave her a lot more agency. We get to see her thought process and what was going on in her head. And like a lot of stories that are set when women don't have a lot of power, her power comes from her, not necessarily, I don't want to say manipulating people, but definitely knowing how to work people around her to get them to do what she wants. So we do see that she's a character that goes out and gets things and we clearly see her motives. They are not always great. She is often motivated by self-preservation, and it was just very good. I just thought it was really well done. It was very well written. I was engaged the whole time. I think I rated this like 4.5 stars. I was very impressed with it. So that is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. New favorite author. It's Ray Bradbury. I have just really liked most of the stuff I have read by him. I read Fahrenheit 451, I think last year, and so far that's been my least favorite. I loved The Halloween Tree. I can't wait to reread it again at Halloween. And I also have Something Wicked This Way Comes that I do want to read in early October. It just has that fall feel, and I know this is a lot of people's favorite. He has a lot of short stories that I need to read, so he is someone that I, at the moment, would be on my favorite authors list. Fictional crush. If you would have asked 16-year-old me, I would have had a lot of answers for this. At this point, I don't really look for that in books that I read. It's just not how I am. Books that made you cry. A lot. A lot. Everything makes me cry. But I would have to say Odd Adventures with Your Other Father by Norman Prentiss. This was an indie horror book. Again, another book told in short story format. But this follows a young girl, and her surviving father is telling her stories of her late father, so his late husband, and telling her stories of one summer when they road tripped across America after they graduated college, and they got into a lot of supernatural adventures. And this just balanced all of the things perfectly. It was a really great short story novel. It had great characters that I cared about, and it balanced all of this with horror at the right times and supernatural elements. And I felt like it did all this in such a fantastic way. I was very impressed. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. So that is Odd Adventures with Your Other Father. Favorite character? That goes to Miriam Black from the Blackbirds series, Miriam Black. I think it's the Miriam Black series. I don't actually know. She has the power that when she touches someone, she sees how they're going to die. And it's interesting to see what she does with this power. She is very much like a dark Lorelai Gilmore in the way that her dialogue is written. It is very fast, very quippy, very vulgar, which is something a lot of people don't like. So just know that going in, is that the dialogue is wholly unrealistic, and I think that's the charm, and that's why I like Miriam Black, is I really try to hear someone saying these sentences in my head while I read them. I've read 2 books in this series, and I have come to love her as a character. You know, she's one of those, like, has a tough exterior, but has a heart of gold, and, like, essentially is a good person, but she pushes people away because she's been through a lot. And look at me, like, I am all about Miriam Black at the moment. So that is Miriam Black from, so far, Blackbirds and Mockingbird. A book that made you happy. For this, I'm going to go with William Shakespeare's Much Ado About Mean Girls, because like a lot of people my age, Mean Girls was just a very important part of growing up. I think Mean Girls the movie came out when I was in 8th grade, 7th or 8th grade, I want to say, and it was a cultural phenomenon. And today it's a cult classic. You know, it's extremely quotable. I loved revisiting it in this format and seeing the new way it's imagined. Basically, this is the script to Mean Girls, but as a Shakespearean play. And I loved it. I thought it was genius. I smiled half the time I was reading this. So I would say this book brought me much happiness. Most beautiful book this year. I'm assuming this is talking about cover design, and for that I would have to say Gabino Iglesias' Coyote songs. This is another short story novel. It's very gritty. It's horror noir, or barrio noir, I think is what he's like called it, because it's about stories about the border. And if you are looking for like a gritty Latinx own voices story, I would definitely recommend this. This is gritty and hard-hitting, but also beautifully written. But I just really love like the burnt orange colors with the Mother Mary design on it. I just really liked it. I think it's very eye-catching. Books you need to read by the end of the year. I mean, a lot. I have a few arcs that I need to read. I'm going to read Something Wicked This Way Comes. I had a video of books I was supposed to do a reread on. We are in July and I have reread none of them. So I need to get on that. Those books were Little Women, East of Eden and 100 Years of Solitude. East of Eden, I think I might miss the window on because I feel like it's a big summer book. So I will try to read Little Women, and I will get to 100 Years of Solitude because the new Netflix series is coming out. And I will read this because the new movie is coming out. So motivated by adaptations as per usual. Those are the books I need to get to. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what the best book is that you have read so far this year. As I said, thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!